The clatter of fiend porcelain against the marble tabletop was the only sound that dared to challenge the thick, air-conditioned silence of the private dining suite. Ananya kept her eyes downcast, her focus trained on the delicate task of pouring the amber-colored Darjeeling tea into Sheikh Tariq Jamil's cup. The scent of his oud, a heavy, cloying fragrance of wealth and wujmak, filled her nostrils, a stark contrast to the familiar smell of rain-soaked earth and fried spices that clung to her own clothes from her journey to the hotel. He was a man carved from impatience, his sharp gestures and clipped sentences making everyone around him move a little faster, a little more nervously. As she set the teapot down, his hand shot out, not for the cup, but for the feel on the other side of the table. The sudden movement caught the edge of his alligator leather wallet, sending it skittering across the smooth surface and onto the plush carpet. "Forgive me, Saib," she murmured, bending down in one fluid motion, her training kicking in. Her fingers brushed against the impossibly soft leather. But as she picked it up, a small, laminated photograph, tucked away in a side flap, slipped out and landed face up on the floor. Ananya's breath reached in her throat. The world tilted, the scent of oud and tea and money vanishing, replaced by the phantom smell of coconut oil and jasmine from a memory she called into to grasp. The woman in the photograph was younger, her small shy but radiant, a small beam degracing her forehead. It was a face she knew better than her own, a face she saw in her recurring dreams and in the single, faded photograph she kept in a tin box under her bed. It was her mother. Before she could process the impossibility of it, a shadow fell over her. Sheikh Jamil was standing, his towering presence sucking the air out of the room. He snatched the wallet and the photo from her unresisting fingers, his eyes no longer just impatient, but cold, hard points of obsidian drilling into her. "You will forget what you saw," he said, his voice a low, dangerous whisper that promised consequences she called in to begin to imagine. The rest of her shift passed in a blur of forced smiles and trembling hands. Every time the door to the kitchen swung open, she expected to see one of the Sheikh's severe-looking bodyguards coming for her. Her manager, Mr. Sharma, had already given her a sharp look when he saw the Sheikh's thunderous expression as she left the suite. She scrubbed furiously at a non-existent stain on the counter, replaying the moment over and over. The texture of the photograph's worn edges, the specific shade of her mother's lipstick, the way her hair was braided with jasmine flowers. It was her, Priya. How could a man like that, a man who seemed to own the very air he breathed, possess a photograph of her mother, a woman who had lived and died in a small, crowded South in India, a woman who had told her daughter that her father was nothing more than a ghost, a beautiful, fleeting dream from another life. The questions hammered at her, each one a nail driving deeper into the fragile peace she had built for herself and her son, Rowan. When her shift finally ended, the monsoon had broken over Mumbai. The city was a cascade of grey sheets of rain, the streets dissolving into rivers of brown water. The boucherie de home was suffocatingly humid, the air thick with the smell of wet earth and exhaust fumes. She clutched her worn hand back to her chest, the image of the photograph burned into her mind. She lived in the single room in a salle, a testament to the city's brutal efficiency in packing lives together. The short corridor was noisy with the sounds of cooking, arguing, and a Bollywood song blaring from a neighbor's radio. Rowan, her 7-year-old son, was waiting for her at the doorway, his face lighting up when he saw her. He was the center of her universe, the reason for the double shifts, the aching feet, the endless parade of demanding guests. "Hey, you weigh a lot," he said, wrapping his small arms around her legs. "Mrs. De Souza, let me watch the cricket match." She forced a smile, stroking his hair. "Is that so? And did you finish your homework?" He nodded enthusiastically, pulling her inside. The room was tiny but immaculate. A small gas stove in one corner, a sleeping mat rolled up against the wall, and a single window that looked out onto a wall of peeling paint. As she prepared a simple dinner of dal and rice, Rowan Sateri thought about his day. She listened with half an ear, her thoughts a world away in a luxurious hotel suite with a menu's wallet held the key to a past she never knew existed. That night, she called in to sleep. The rain drummed a relentless rhythm on the tin roof. She took out her small tin box. Inside, nestled among a few pieces of silver jewelry, was her own copy of the photograph. It was identical. The same shy smile, the same jasmine in her hair. Her mother had given it to her when she was very young, saying, "This is so you remember me happy." Who is he? And why, after all these years, was he here in Mumbai? The next day, Ananya went to work with a knot of dread in her stomach. She half hoped, half feared she would be told her services were no longer required. But the day proceeded as normal. Mr. Sharma was busy fighting over a new group of foreign investors when the sheikh was not on the roster for the restaurant. A wave of relief, followed by a strange pain of disappointment, washed over her. The mystery remained unsolved, a closed door. It wasn't until the end of her shift that her world was opened again. One of the junior hostesses watched over her, her eyes wide. And then yet, Mr. Sharma wants to see you in his office. Now, Mr. Sharma's office was small and smelled of stale cigarette smoke and anxiety. He was shuffling papers on his desk, refusing to meet her eye. Ananya, he began, clearing his throat. There has been a special request from Sheikh Tariq al-Jamil. Ananya's heart began to pound against her ribs. He has booked the presidential suite for the remainder of his stay, 2 weeks. He has requested a dedicated service staff member for his private dining. He has requested you. She stared at him, speechless. Moo. But why? Mr. Sharma finally looked up, his expression a mixture of irritation and awe. I have no idea. These men, they are eccentric. They see if as they lie, they make a demand. Your job is not to ask why. Your job is to say yes. You will report directly to the suite tomorrow morning at 8 sharp. Do not be late. And then Manya, he leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, do not do anything to displease him. This account is worth more than this entire hotel's yearly profit. The unspoken threat hung in the air. This was no longer just about her. It was about her job, her ability to provide for Rowan. She had no choice. She had to walk into the lioness den. What did he want from her? The next morning, Ananya stood outside the polished mahogany doors of the presidential suite, her hand hovering over the doorbell. She had chosen her uniform with extra care, ensuring it was spotless and perfectly pressed. She had braided her hair tightly, trying to project an aura of professionalism she did not feel. Inside, her stomach was a churning sea of fear and curiosity. She pressed the bell. The door was opened not by a bodyguard, but by the sheikh himself. He was dressed in a simple white dishdasa, which made him seem less imposing, almost approachable. But his eyes were just as intense. He simply looked at her for a long moment, a silent appraisal that made her skin prickle. You are punctual, he said, his voice flat. Come in. The suite was breathtaking. It was larger than her entire floor of the sol. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the Arabian Sea, the waves crashing against the shore far below. The furniture was a blend of modern minimalism and traditional Arabic design, all dark wood, rich fabrics, and gleaming metal. Your duties will be simple, he explained, walking towards the dining area. You will serve my breakfast at 8, lunch at 1, and dinner at 8 in the evening. You will coordinate with the hotel kitchen. I will give you my preferences each morning. Outside of those things, you will remain on call in the staff quarters adjoining the suite. Do you understand? Yes, Saeed, she replied, her voice barely a whisper. He turned to face her, his gaze unwavering. My stay here is for business. I require absolute discretion. What happens in this suite, what is said in this suite, stays in this suite. I understand, Saeed. It was a test. Everything about this was a test. He was watching her, waiting for a flicker of recognition, a sign that she remembered the photograph. She kept her expression neutral, her posture respectful. She was a waitress, and he was a guest. That was all. The first few days were an exercise in excruciating tension. Ananya moved around the opulent suite like a ghost, speaking only when spoken to. She served his meals, cleared the dishes, and retreated to the small, windowless staff room. He ate alone, often while working, his laptop open, his phone buzzing intermittently with calls in Arabic. He never mentioned the wallet. He never mentioned the photograph, but she could feel his eyes on her when she wasn't looking. Sometimes, when she was clearing the table, she would catch him staring at her with a strange, unreadable expression. It wasn't menacing, not exactly. It was analytical, as if he were trying to solve a puzzle. He would ask her seemingly random questions. Are you from Mumbai? Yes, Saib. Born and raised. Your family. They are here. I have a son, Saib. A flicker of something in his eyes. And his father? The question was so personal, a breach of the unspoken wall between them. Ananya paused, her hand holding a plate. He is not in our lives, Saib. She delivered the line with quiet dignity, without a trace of self-pity. She saw a muscle twitch in his jaw. He didn't press further. The contrast between her two lives had never been more stark. In the mornings, she would leave Rowan with her neighbor, Mrs. De Souza, an elderly but kind woman, and travel by the crowded locale train to a world of silent, air-conditioned luxury. In the evenings, she would return to the noise and chaos of her zal, the smell of the sheikh's expensive cologne replaced by the smell of fish curry and incense. One afternoon, as she was serving him his lunch of grilled fish and saffron rice, he did something unexpected. Sit, he said, gesturing to the chair opposite him. Ananya froze. Said, sit down. The table is large enough for two. Hesitantly, she pushed on the edge of the chair, her back ramrod straight. It felt deeply wrong, a violation of the natural order of her world. A silence stretched between them, broken only by the clinking of his cutlery. Tell me about your son, he said finally, his voice softer than she had ever heard it. His name is Rowan. He is 7, she said, her voice tight. He is very smart. He loves to read. And his school? A local municipal school, Saib. It is. All I can afford. You work long hours to provide for him. It wasn't a question, but a statement. He is my world, she said simply. He stopped eating and looked at her, truly looked at her, for the first time. The analytical gaze was gone, replaced by something warmer, something that looked almost like pain. He seemed about to say something important, when his phone rang, shattering the moment. He answered, his voice immediately shifting back to the sharp, commanding tone of a businessman. The spell was broken. She quietly stood up and began clearing the plates, her heart throbbing with a strange mix of fear and a fragile, nascent hope. He was beginning to see her, not as a waitress, not as a faceless part of the hotel machinery, but as a person. But why? The question still haunted her nights. What was his connection to her mother, and what did he want with her? The answer, she suspected, would change her life forever. A week into her strange, gilded captivity, a routine established itself. The tension was still there, alone beneath the surface of their formal interactions, but it was punctuated by these odd moments of connection. He would ask about Rowan's favorite subjects in school or what she liked to cook on her day off. She, in turn, learned his habits, the way he liked his coffee black and strong, his preference for spicy food, a surprising taste for old indie film music, which sometimes played softly from his laptop in the evenings. He was a man of immense control, yet he saw cracks in the facade. She saw it in the way his shoulders would slump slightly after a long, tense business call. She saw it in the fleeting moments when he would stare out at the sea, his face a mask of profound loneliness. One evening, a massive deal he was working on seemed to hit a snag. He spent hours pacing the length of the suite, his voice a lull, angry torrent of Arabic on the phone. Dinner went untouched. She watched from the doorway of the service area, a silent observer key a crisis she couldn't comprehend. Finally, he slammed the phone down and ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of pure frustration. He looked up and saw her standing there. What is it? He snapped, his anger spilling over. Nothing, Saib. I was just concerned, she said softly. You have not eaten. His anger seemed to deflate, replaced by a weary sigh. He sank into a chair, his powerful frame looking suddenly vulnerable. It is nothing. Those are all troubles that come with building empires. Betrayal, greed. It is the language of my world. He looked at her, his eyes searching her face. You have an honest face. It is rare. The compliment, so unexpected, left her momentarily flustered. I was taught that honesty is all a poor person truly owns, she replied, echoing a lesson her mother had instilled in her. His gaze sharpened. Your mother. She taught you that? Yes, Saib. She was a good woman, kind and strong. Ananias' voice trembled slightly. It was the first time she had voluntarily brought her mother into their conversation. This was it, the opening he had been waiting for, but he didn't take it. Instead, he just nodded slowly, a deep sadness settling in his eyes. Yes, he whispered, almost to himself. She was. The near admission hung in the air between them, more powerful than any confession. He knew. He had known her mother. The thought sent a jolt through her, a mixture of validation and terror. The next day, he was scheduled to host an important business dinner in the suite. Ananya was tasked with coordinating everything, from the complex menu to the seating arrangements. His primary business partner in Mumbai, a slick real estate developer named Mr. Rana, arrived first. Rana was everything the sheikh was not: loud, ostentatious, with a smile that never quite reached his eyes. He treated Ananya with a casual disdain, dismissing her with a flick of his wrist as if she were an annoying fly. Throughout the dinner, Ananya moved with quiet efficiency, refilling glasses, serving dishes, and remaining invisible. But she listened. The deal, she gathered, was for a massive luxury high-rise project in Indri. They were in the final stages of acquiring the land, a large plot currently occupied by a collection of illegal slums, as Mr. Rana contemptuously put it. Ananya felt a cold chill run down her spine. The residents are making trouble, Rana complained, sipping his expensive wine, protesting, making demands. We will have to get the police to clear them out. A few broken hands should convince them. Sheikh Jamil was silent, his face unreadable as he stipulated his fingers. Demolition is the last resort, Vikram, he said, his voice dangerously soft. There are families there. We must ensure they are compensated fairly, relocated properly. Rana laughs, a harsh, grating sound. Tariq, my friend, your heart is too soft. This is Mumbai, it is a jungle. You show weakness, and they will devour you. They are nothing. We are building the future. Ananya's hands tightened on the serving tray she was holding. Her soul. He was talking about your home, the place where Rowan was sleeping, where Mrs. De Souza was watching television, where hundreds of families lived their lives. They were planning to bulldoze it, to sweep them all away like so much dust. She looked at Sheikh Jamil, trying to gauge his reaction. His face was a stone mess, but his eyes were fixed on her. He had seen the flicker of panic in her expression. He knew she had understood. After the guests had left, a heavy silence descended on the suite. Ananya worked on autopilot, clearing the remnants of the lavish meal. Her mind was racing. Was this a coincidence? Or was it all connected? Was his sudden appearance in her life tied to the destruction of her home? He is a ruthless man, Mr. Rana, the sheikh said, startling her. He was standing by the window, looking down at the glittering lights of the city. He sees people as obstacles, not as souls. He turned to her, the lad he spoke of. Your home is there, isn't it? She could only nod, her throat too tight to speak. I did not know this until recently, he said. My people did the initial survey, but I was not aware of the specifics of the demographics until this week. He paused, his gaze intense. Ananya, there is something I must tell you, something I should have told you from the beginning. He walked over to a drawer in his desk and took out his wallet. With deliberate slowness, he extracted the small, laminated photograph. He held it out to her. Her name was Priya. I met her 25 years ago on my first trip to Mumbai. I was not a sheikh then, just a young man, the second son, with little power and less wealth. I was nobody. His voice was thick with memory. She worked as a tour guide. She showed me the city. Not the city of tourists, but the real city. Its heart, its spirit. She was like a flame, bright, warm, and alive. He looked from the photograph to Ananya's face. You have her eyes, the same fire. Ananya took the photograph with a trembling hand, tears blurring her vision. It was all real. This impossible story was real. What happened? She whispered. I fell in love with her, he said simply, as if it were the most obvious truth in the world. I promised her I would come back. I promised I would marry her. But when I returned to my country, my father had died. My older brother was killed in a political dispute. Suddenly, I was the head of the family with immense responsibilities. My council of elders, they arranged a marriage for me, a strategic alliance. To refuse would have meant war. I had no choice. He looked away, his shame a palpable thing in the room. I tried to contact her. I wrote letters, but they were all returned. I sent a man to find her, but she had vanished. She had moved from her old address. It was as if she had disappeared from the earth. I thought she had married someone else, that she had forgotten me. She never married, Ananya said, her voice choked with tears. She waited. She always told me my father was a beautiful dream she once had. She didn't want me to grow up feeling the loss of a man who was never coming back. The weight of her mother as a sacrifice, her quiet, lifelong act of protection, settled upon her. And in that moment, she understood the deep, abiding sadness she had always sensed in her mother as stories. The truth was finally out, a painful, shimmering thing in the silent, expensive room. She was the daughter of a sheikh, a man who commanded empires, and that same man was now poised to destroy her home, the only world she had ever known. The irony was so bitter it felt like poison. He had found his lost love's daughter, only to render her homeless. The revelation changed everything and nothing. Ananya still served his meals, but the silence between them was now filled with the deafening war of unspoken things. He was her father. The word felt alien on her tongue, impossible to form. He was a stranger who shared her blood, a ghost from her mother's past made real. He, in turn, seemed burdened by a heavy guilt. He would watch her with a pained expression, his attempts at conversation now stilted and awkward. The chasm of 25 years, of vastly different lives, lay between them, though wide to cross. For Ananya, the immediate terror was the fate of her community. She saw the faces of her neighbors in her mind. Mrs. de Souza, who had been a second grandmother to Roland, the tailor in the next room who was saving for his daughter's wedding, the countless families who had lived there for generations. They were not illegal slum dwellers. They were a community, a vibrant, living network of shared struggles and small joys. Mr. René's casual cruelty echoed in her ears. A few broken heads. She knew he was capable of it. Men like him saw people like her as inconveniences, not human beings. She had to do something. The quiet waitress, trained to be invisible, had to find a voice. Her first step was to talk to the other residents. That evening, after her shift, she found a small gathering in the community as a central courtyard. An old man, Mr. Trivedi, a retired schoolteacher and the unofficial leader of the soul, was speaking to a worried crowd. They have given us an eviction notice, he was saying, his voice frail but firm. 15 days. They offer appearances compensation, not enough to rent a room for a month in the city. A wave of angry, frightened murmurs went through the crowd. Ananya stepped forward. We cannot let them do this, she said, her own voice surprising her with its strength. All eyes turned to her. They think we are weak because we are poor. They think we have no voice. We must show them they are wrong. Over the next few days, Ananya used every spare moment she had. She helped Mr. Trivedi draft petitions. She went with a group of women to the local municipal office, where they were met with a wall of bureaucratic indifference. She learned about zoning laws, tenant rights, and the long history of developers illegally displacing the poor. She was no longer just a waitress. She was an activist, fueled by a fierce, protective love for her home and her son's future. Back in the presidential suite, the atmosphere grew even more strained. Sheikh Jamil knew what she was doing. Perhaps he had his own people watching her, or perhaps he could simply see the new fire of purpose in her eyes. He never forbade her from her activities, but a deep, unspoken conflict simmered between them. He was funding the very project she was fighting against. One afternoon, he confronted her directly. What you are doing is dangerous, Ananya, he said, his tone laced with concern. Mr. René is not a man to be trifled with. He has connections. He can make your life very difficult, and I should do nothing. She shot back, her deference finally cracking. I should stand by and watch as he throws my son and all my neighbors onto the street. Is that what you would do? Of course not. I am trying to. I have told him the compensation must be fair. Fair? She laughed, a short, bitter sound. What does a man like him know of fairness? Your fair compensation is an insult. It asks a few rupees to buy our silence while you build your glass towers on the ruins of our lives. The words rang in the air, sharp and accusatory. She had crossed the line, speaking to him not as an employee, but as an equal, as an adversary. His face hardened. You do not understand the complexities of these matters. This project is worth billions. There are contracts, investors, political agreements. I understand that my son needs a roof over his head, she interrupted, her voice shaking with emotion. And I will fight for it. With or without your help. She turned and walked away, leaving him standing alone in the vast, silent room. The battle lines were drawn. The next day, Mr. Rana paid a visit to the sheikh. Ananya was serving them coffee when she heard her name. This waitress of yours, Rana said with a sneer. I hear she is causing Kita stir. A little slum girl trying to be a leader. It is amusing. The sheikh said nothing, his face impassive. Don't worry, Rana continued, misreading the silence. You'll handle it. A visit from some of my associates to her little hovel tonight should quiet her down. A little persuasion is all these people understand. Ananya's blood went cold. It was a direct threat. She looked at the sheikh, her eyes bleeding. This was his moment of truth. Would the powerful businessman protect his investment, or would the father protect his daughter? Sheikh Al-Jamil placed his cup down with a deliberate, firm click. He looked at Vikram Rana, and for the first time, Ananya saw the full, terrifying power he held in reserve. The polite businessman vanished, replaced by a desert chieftain, cold and absolute. Vikram, he said, his voice dropping to a deadly calm. If a single hair on her head is harmed, if anyone so much as frightens their child, I will not just cancel our project, I will personally dismantle your entire empire, piece by piece. I will ruin you so completely that your own children will forget your name. Am I making myself clear? René's arrogant smirk evaporated, his face turning pale. He had seen his own reflection in the eyes of a predator and understood, perhaps for the first time in his life, what it felt like to be prey. He stammered an apology and left the suite in a hurry. Ananya stood frozen, her heart hammering in her chest. He had chosen her. He had protected her. He was still a stranger in so many ways, a man from another universe, but in that moment, she felt a fragile, tentative thread of connection form between them. It wasn't a solution to her problems, but it was something. It was a start. He had shown her who he was. Now, she had to show him who she was. The threat from Rana had been neutralized, but the eviction notice still loomed over the community like a guillotine. Sheikh Al-Jamil's intervention had been a personal shield for Ananya, not a systemic solution for the hundreds of families living in the soul. The project was still moving forward, a juggernaut of money and power. Ananya knew that the confrontation was inevitable. The sheikh arranged a formal meeting. It was to be held in the hotel's main conference room. On one side of the vast mahogany table would be Sheikh Tariq Al-Jamil, Vikram Rana, and their team of lawyers. On the other side would be the representatives from Nuzul, Mr. Trivedi, Ananya, and a handful of other community members. It was a David and Goliath scenario, and Ananya felt the crushing weight of her neighbor's hopes on her shoulders. The night before the meeting, she called in to sleep. She sat by the small window in her room, watching the rain fall, listening to the familiar sounds of her community. This was what she was fighting for, not just the physical space, but the lifeblood of the place, the network of human connections that men like Rana could never comprehend. She thought of her mother, Priya. What would she have done? Her mother had faced her own impossible situation. She had chosen quiet resilience, protecting her child by disappearing. Ananya had to make a different choice. She had to stand and fight. She had to be the fire her father claimed to see in her eyes. The next morning, she went to the presidential suite not as a waitress, but as her father's opponent. She did not wear her uniform. She wore a simple but dignified cotton city, one her mother had left her. She served the sheikh's morning coffee in silence. The air was thick with unspoken tension. Are you ready for this? He asked it, his voice low. I have to be, she replied, meeting his gaze directly. They are my people. There was a new respect in his eyes when he looked at her. He saw not just Priya's daughter, but a leader in her own right. The conference room was intimidating, designed to make people feel small. Mr. Ren and his lawyers were already seated, exuding an aura of smug confidence. They looked at Ananya and her small contingent with unconcealed contempt. When Sheikh Jamil walked in and took his seat, the mood shifted. His presence commanded the room. The meeting began. Rene's lawyers presented their case, a dry recitation of legal clauses and property deeds, all painting the residents as illegal squatters who were obstructing progress. They presented their generous compensation package, which everyone in the room knew was a joke. Then it was Mr. Trivedi's turn. He spoke eloquently about the history of the community, how many families had been there for over 50 years, long before the city had grown around them. He spoke of their legal and moral right to their homes. Finally, it was Ananya's turn. She stood up, her hands trembling slightly, but her voice clear and steady. She did not look at the lawyers or at Rana. She looked directly at Sheikh Tariq al-Jamil. Saib, she began, rules of the honorific both a mark of respect and a subtle challenge. These men speak of property and progress. I want to speak about people. They see a slum. I see the home where my son took his first steps. Mr. Trivedi sees the garden where his wife planted a tulsi plant that is still growing today. Every family here is a story, a history tied to that land. She paused, letting her words sink in. You have come to our city to build a legacy, a great tower that will reach for the sky, a monument to your success. But what kind of legacy is built on the tears of women and the fears of children? What kind of success requires you to make hundreds of families homeless? Her voice grew stronger, imbued with a passion that silenced the room. I have learned in the past weeks that you are a man who understands loss. A man who carries a memory in his wallet for 25 years. A man who lost someone he loved because of duty and circumstance. She was treading on dangerous ground, making their private history a public matter, but she had to take the risk. The woman in that photograph, my mother, taught me that wealth is not measured in money, but in kindness and integrity. I ask you now, I appeal to you, not as a developer to a squatter, but as one human being to another, as a father to a mother. What will your legacy be? A tower of glass and steel, or a foundation of justice and compassion? She sat down, her heart pounding. The room was utterly silent. Mr. Rena looked furious, his face red with anger at her audacity. The lawyers shuffled their papers, avoiding eye contact. All that mattered was the sheikh. He sat motionless, his face an unreadable mask, his eyes locked on her. It felt like an eternity. He had the power to dismiss her words, to crush their protest with a single nod. He could choose his billions over his blood. Finally, he moved. He did not speak to his lawyers or to Rena. He spoke directly to Ananya and her community. Mrs. Ananya's right, he said, his voice resonating with authority. The use of Mrs. was a formal acknowledgement, a sign of respect. A legacy built on injustice is no legacy at all. It is a monument to shame. He turned his cold gaze on Vikram Rana. The current proposal is rejected. The eviction notices are withdrawn. Effective immediately. A collective gasp went through the room. But Tariq, Rana spluttered. The contracts, the investors. The investors will be informed of a new plan. The sheikh cut him off, his tone leaving no room for argument. We will still build, but we will build differently. Phase 1 of the project will be to construct new, permanent, and safe housing for every single family currently residing on that land. They will be given ownership, not tenancy, at no cost to them. Ananya stared at him, unable to believe what she was hearing. Once the residents are relocated to their new homes, he continued, his eyes finding Ananya's again, we will proceed with the commercial development on the remaining land. Furthermore, we will establish a foundation, the Priya Foundation. It will be endowed to build schools and provide healthcare for this community. It will be managed by a board of trustees, chaired by Mr. Trivedi and Mrs. Ananya. It was more than a victory. It was a miracle born not of magic, but of one woman's courage and one man's long-delayed redemption. Ananya felt tears streaming down her face, tears of relief, of gratitude, of an overwhelming, complicated wave of emotion for the father she had only just found. He had not just saved her home, he had honored her mother. He had given them all a future. In the weeks that followed, the world shifted on its axis. The news of Sheikh Jamil's decision sent shockwaves through the Mumbai real estate world and turned Ananya into an unlikely local hero. She was no longer just a waitress. She was the chairperson of a foundation, a community leader whose voice was suddenly sought after. The soul was filled with an air of celebration and disbelief. The fear that had haunted their lives for months was replaced by the exciting prospect of a new beginning. Architects and planners, under the Sheikh's direct orders, began meeting with the community, designing the new housing complex not as a top-down project, but as a collaborative effort. The Sheikh extended his stay in Mumbai to oversee the initial stages. His relationship with Ananya slowly, carefully, began to evolve. The formal distance of the presidential suite was replaced by tentative conversations. They did not try to force a father-daughter relationship. The years of absence and the vast differences in their lives were a chasm that could not be crossed overnight. Instead, they started with stories. He told her more about his youth, about the man her mother had fallen in love with. He spoke of his country, his family, the heavy weight of the crown he never expected to wear. In return, she told him about her life, about the struggles and the joys of raising Rowan on her own. She told him about her mother, not as the girl he remembered, but as the woman she had become, a strong, loving mother who had filled their small home with warmth and stories. He listened to every word, his face touched with a bittersweet mixture of regret and pride. One afternoon, he asked him to meet Rowan. Ananya was nervous, but she agreed. They met not in the hotel, but in a public park, near the Gateway of India. The Sheikh arrived not with an entourage of bodyguards, but alone, dressed in a simple Western-style suit. He looked like any other tourist. Rowan, shy at first, was quickly won over when the Sheikh, having learned of his love for wedding, presented him with a collection of beautifully illustrated books. He knelt down to speak to Rowan, not as a powerful Sheikh, but as a man meeting his grandson for the first time. He asked him about school and cricket, his eyes full of a gentle warmth that Ananya had never seen before. Watching them together, a strange peace settled over Ananya. The anger and resentment she had harbored for the anonymous, absent father of her childhood began to dissolve. She saw not a villain, but a man trapped by destiny, a man who had been carrying a silent heartbreak for a quarter of a century. She saw a man who was trying, in the only way he knew how, to make amends. The day before he was due to leave Mumbai, he asked Ananya to walk with him along Marine Drive. The monsoon sky was a soft gray, the sea calm. The foundation is in good hands, he said. Yours and Mr. Trivedi S. You will do great things. Thank you, she said softly, for everything. You didn't have to do it. Yes, I did, he replied, his gaze fixed on the horizon. It is the first thing I have done in a very long time that feels right. But you would have wanted it. He stopped walking and turned to her. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. He opened it and showed her the photograph of her mother, still nestled in its plastic sleeve. I have carried her with me for 25 years, he said, his voice thick with emotion. A reminder of a promise I failed to keep. He then did something that surprised her. He carefully removed the photo from his wallet. He opened his hand, and the sea breeze caught it, threatening to carry it away. Then, he offered it to her. I think, he said, his voice cracking slightly, it is time for her to be home, with you. Ananya took the photograph, her fingers closing around the worn image of her mother as a smiling face. It was a transfer of guardianship, an acknowledgement that Priya's memory belonged here, with her daughter. Will you come back? She asked, the question hanging in the salty air. Rowan. He would like to see his grandfather again. A slow smile spread across his face, a genuine smile that reached his eyes and transformed his severe features. I have a grandson to visit, and the foundation to check on, he said. I will be back very soon. As she watched his car drive away, headed for the airport, Ananya did not feel like she was losing a father she had just found. She felt like she was at the beginning of a new, unexpected chapter. She looked down at the photograph in her hand, then out at the sprawling, chaotic, beautiful city that was her home. Her life was no fairy tale. The scars of the past were real, and the future was unwritten, but for the first time, it felt limitless. She was no longer just Ananya, the waitress. She was Ananya, the daughter of Priya, a community leader, a mother, and the guardian of a legacy of love and resilience. And her story was just getting started. What you've just witnessed is a story about how integrity and courage can stand up to immense power. It is a reminder that beneath the surface of status and wealth, we are all just human, driven by love, regret, and the hope for redemption. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel for more tales that explore the depths of human character. And let us know in the comments below, what was the moment in Ananya's journey that moved you the most? We love hearing your thoughts.